am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now,
Hello, and welcome everyone to Downtime. Thank you all for joining us. With me tonight is Lance McMillan. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good, glad to hear it. There's been a lot. So we got that video. That was the deep fake. What makes that interesting is that was done live. That wasn't processed. So as he's talking, his voice is being converted over, all his facial, and That was impressive. I thought that wasn't they didn't have, that was real time processing. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I think bears mentioning is deepfake technology is still pretty much in its infancy. Mm-hmm. You can imagine extending out 10, 15, 20 years into the future how frighteningly undetectable that is going to be.
Yeah.
You'll never be able to trust anything you see on video again or audio.
Yeah, it's oh dear Lord, no, it's got that off of Twitter, and it basically the tagline read, "We're all fucked." Or did I asked you earlier? So It's been a day. I'm still trying to figure out the Jordan Peterson thing, and I forgot to do that. I got distracted. There was a lot going on, but it was something about Jordan Peterson doing burlesque, and I'm like, okay, is this real? I'm not putting anything past reality at this point. I'm like, I gotta look at that and see if that one was real. But this morning's, yeah, that was interesting this morning. This morning we did.
God.
I know.
For some reason, I just happened to stumble across it while you were on, so I just clicked in to see what this was all about, and I saw it, and I'm going, "Oh my blanking God!" This doesn't qualify as news. This thing doesn't even qualify as satire. It's something of its own measure.
Its own beast. Well, and maybe a tragedy. It was, yeah. Well, and it was funny because I was just, learning more and more as we're doing it, and then when I realized that they were digital, which of course I had said repeatedly, but I didn't process because I was like, wait a minute, this isn't even real. I'll tell you, we had some idea where this was going beforehand, so it was supposed to be an overtime show because we were going to be covering it. Once I had an idea of what we're doing, I switched at the last second to In Time, and it's the In Time interface. And this to the people who've been with us for a while, they get how and why we do things that way. And I think you're getting how and why we do things that way. But it's like, for overtime, I'm like, I will not have that on overtime because I won't be able to restrain myself. And it's supposed to be a professional. I was like, so it's just In Time, and I'm going to mock the shit out of, oh God. I needed that, I guess. It was, yeah. It was nice to have, but I don't.
You can hear the giant Bozo the Clown shoes flapping down the hallway as he runs to his next engagement.
Well, and the question, this was somebody had asked earlier too. I was like, okay, does Stormy Daniels getting a card? It's just like it's
Wonder Woman.
It's just like shit. Well, and I was sitting there going, like, okay, maybe this stream, because last time you were on, we had a lot of fun. May have gone a little overboard with rogering hippos and stuff like that, but I was like, okay, it was fun. It was a good stream. And I'm doing this thing, and Titan was just like, oh, what are you guys going to be discussing tonight, you and McMillan? And I was like, well, we're gonna try to get a little more serious, a little more real. So we're gonna be talking about the new. Oh, fuck! Like, that's it. It's over. I'm not even trying. I'm calling it.
Let's just go back and talk about rogering hippos.
Let's go back to the hippos. That was more believable, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Lord.
Oh, dear Lord. And for people who didn't see last week's show, I wish we were making that up. No, there was a good portion of the show dedicated to Xander's not in the room, is he? No. Dedicated to Xandering, just having intimate relations with hippos. And, go back and tell me why.
I look sealed.
Of course, I forget that he watches the shows. So, oh dear Lord. That was unexpected, and my brain is still all over the place. Part of that was just stalling for time because there was something I wanted to ask you about, and
It's a perfect example of, the guy's 15 minutes of fame have faded, but it's so irritating to him that he still doesn't have this, audience to give him approbation, that he comes up with BS just so he can get a headline.
Yeah, and that was where I was thinking about, I said to the line, my 6-week-old puppy is less desperate for attention, and that was the first thought that crossed my mind and I do on occasion. Okay, so Yi. I get ambivalent about that because he has mental health issues. He's admitted he's got mental health issues. Everyone around him has admitted he's got mental health issues. And if you have any experience with those kinds of issues, you can tell exactly what's going on. It's really, you don't have to be a psychologist. There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to this stuff, and this isn't really complicated. He did what people with his specific issues have a tendency to do. He went off his meds. And he admitted he's gone off his meds, and his behavior is exactly the behavior that you see when somebody of his condition goes off their meds. It's textbook. So I get ambivalent because, other than when he's off his meds and he's really he goes into the cray-cray. It doesn't seem to me like he's a bad guy. I don't know much about him, but I didn't get any indications beforehand that he was a bad guy or anything like that. And okay, he lost all this money, except, if the guy can make that kind of money, good for him, which of us wouldn't want to. I don't want to see him suffer on the flip side, especially when he says some pretty, terrible things that he needs to get pushed back on. It's hard to not say, okay, I'm just going to mock the living daylights out of him, despite the fact that it's a genuine condition and it's quite a serious one. So, and I get the same thing with Trump. It's like, how much do I mock the guy, and how much is he's just an abject fucking clown. And part of being an adult is realizing he's a clown and not, I don't know. That's what I was thinking.
It's interesting you bring this up because I'm reminded of a historical anecdote here, and I can't remember which election it was, but it was one of FDR's elections, and the guy who was running against him just made an offhand remark at some speech of that sick man in the White House. Now,
ooh,
yeah,
that took me a sec.
Yeah, and basically, most people agree that probably cost him the election. Because at that time, you did not mock people who had illnesses. You tried to have some decorum in politics. Trump has kind of taken that old paradigm and just said, oh, I'm not even going to put it in the trash can. I'm going to, take it out and throw it into the middle of the freeway and see if I can cause an accident with it. And that's where we are. And yeah, if you can stand up and, have the world believe that you saying you're selling digital pictures of trading cards is, big news, we all got to cover it. It kind of shows you that, what the media has lost track of reality somewhat.
Making a friendly wager for my friends. I would like you in on it. The stakes are absolutely zero. Nobody's betting anything. But
my favorite kind of bet.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind that I'm most comfortable with because I have a tendency to be wrong about this shit more often than right. My thinking is not many people are going to buy it, and that rich people have no interest in it because they see Trump as a scammer, and Trump's base doesn't really have the money to buy many. They may buy a few. I have a friend who came out and said, nope, I do think there's going to be some MAGA who can't afford it and they're going to buy it. It's almost like the lottery ticket. I personally know people who bought the Iraq memorial plates. Do you remember when those plates came out? And it was the Bush plates, and these guys Bush and mission accomplished. And it's sort of like, yeah. And I know people who bought that, and it strikes me that it may be the same kind of people across the board.
The market for tactless tchotchkes.
Bingo. But I mean, $100 for one of these, and by the way, they're digital, which means, and I mocked this earlier, and I got called out by a buddy of mine, and it was just like, well, no, you can't replicate it. First of all, actually, I suspect you can, and I suspect I know how, but they don't. If they're NFTs,
screen capture.
It's a screen capture. The screen capture isn't a perfect replica. There's a way to get a perfect replica on a PC. It's real easy. I used to do game design. You've done it. No matter how encoded, and a lot of games like World of Warcraft doesn't encode their assets anymore. A lot of games don't encode the assets, and the reason is it's so easy to decode them because no matter how much security you have, I shouldn't get off on this too much. We usually think of theft as ABC. You've got the person who makes the product, person who buys the product, and the thief. So those are the three different. But in the digital world, the person who buys the product is the thief. So they're not trying to help protect it. So you can copy music because music has to, as it's decoded, go through a buffer. Loads of programs to just rip something right out of the buffer, do it with the graphics, do it with the... You can snag anything. But all that notwithstanding, he's only given out 20 copies max of some of these things because of crypto. He can have some assurances of that. That's what he's doing, and that's all well and good. But the reality is, yes, anybody can copy these. They can go anywhere. It's not that hard. But the people who are buying it aren't necessarily the ones who are really savvy with computers anyway. So how many of Trump's base is going to want to put down that kind of cash for something that I think they're going to not really necessarily understand? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think you're overthinking it.
Oh, me? Overthink something?
I think the real market for this is his deep pocket oligarchic backers. Because they can't get money to him legally any other way right now because he's been shut down with all his fundraising things.
Yep.
So if you do this as I'm purchasing these NFTs, nobody can call you on it. I mean, they've done this forever because you get, ghost-written books by candidates, and they get, hundreds of thousands, millions of copies of the stupid thing sold. And, you talk to somebody in the publishing industry, and they say, yeah, most of them go to the same person, and they immediately go into the recycler. They just grind them back up for pulp. It's just a way of laundering money.
Well, that's what, yeah, like buying books. Somebody will get a book out there and he'll buy 10,000 copies of. Yeah. All right, no, that makes much more. You're right. I was overthinking that. I think you're right. Well, he needs money bad now. The Trump organization is yeah. Yeah.
Between legal fees and all the restrictions now on him being able to do anything. Yeah. That seems to me the logical thing to assume that's going on here.
No, that makes sense. I wish I had thought of that sooner. I didn't think of it at all. I had to have it explained to me, but I wish I had figured that one out. That's because I think you're right. I think that's pretty. Oh, all right. Well, so let's see. We got Trump. He's not. I had figured probably Speaker of the House. And I was not entirely joking when I said maybe he's running for Prime Minister of England, because it really wouldn't have surprised me.
Well, yeah, the Conservatives are having trouble getting anybody to accept the office at this point. So. Give it to somebody whose political career is already ruined. It won't hurt us.
Oh, dear Lord. So what else is going on? Anything?
I try to avoid talking about Ukraine because I know you have Starsky presumably going to make it tomorrow, and I don't want to steal his thunder. And unfortunately, I can't be there because I've got some medical appointments I got to take care of. But I'll note two things that I think are significant. One is that, and we've seen this going on time and time again, basically for the past 3-4 months, of the Russians slamming their heads against the fortified lines around Bakhmut.
Yeah.
And they make progress, and then periodically the Ukrainians will launch a counteroffensive and take back a significant portion of what was lost, and you get right back to the same thing. But the casualty levels that are being produced out of this constant grinding assault are pretty horrific for the Russians. I'm sure they're bad for the Ukrainians too. Trench warfare is bad for everybody. But the Wagner group apparently is kind of broken at the moment.
Really?
Because they took so many casualties in these failed assaults, and B, somebody figured out where their headquarters was.
I had not heard that.
Yes, and pop goes the weasel.
Yeah.
And depending on whose report you believe, upwards of 20 to 30 senior officer level people in the Wagner group were taken out by that strike.
Well, this is a private organization. I have to believe that those kinds of losses are near catastrophic for that group.
Yeah. Those are founding members probably, or at least close to it. So that probably takes them out of the picture for a little while. And the interesting side effect of that may be that we will see the Russian army taking more of the more control of that operation. And I suspect, if I were a Russian, I would hope that saner heads would prevail and somebody would say, this is kind of a dumb thing. Let's stop wasting lives and equipment trying to take a relatively insignificant town. So that was one thing I thought was interesting. And the second thing is that I don't know if it's been formally approved yet, but apparently it is very close to being approved, which is giving Patriot missile anti-aircraft, anti-missile air defense systems to the Ukrainians. I think a lot of people are overselling this. It's an extremely effective and capable system, but it's not a system. I mean, the missiles are very expensive. It's a fixed air defense system. I mean, it's mobile to the extent that you can move it around, but for the most part, once you set it up, it takes time to set it up, then it takes time to take it down to move to another site. And we're talking, 2 hours to do that. So it's kind of a fixed system, so it's easy to counterstrike it. The other thing is, the Patriot was originally designed as a missile to shoot down low-level, high-speed inbound strike aircraft. And then somebody figured out, well, if we make some slight tweaks to the software, we might even be able to use this thing to take down inbound ballistic missiles, which have extremely high reentry speeds. Now, if you think back and kind of recall some of the video images that came out of the Desert Storm operation, where Saddam was shooting Scuds at U.S. forces, and we were using Patriots to shoot down those Scuds. In reality, we never hit a single Scud.
I sort of vaguely remember that, and since, to the best of my recollection,
I mean, you see the thing going off, and it looks exactly like what's happening. But between the outbound missile going very fast and the inbound Scud coming in very fast, the fusing was wrong, and when it would detonate, basically the explosion wouldn't have time to deploy to catch the inbound warhead. It would kind of catch behind the missile or the Scud as it fell to Earth. So it never really succeeded in that. Now, it has since been updated a number of times to where it can do that. But again, it's a very expensive missile system. So you're not going to want to use it to shoot down, inbound Iranian propeller drones and that kind of crap.
Well, the Scud was,
you only want to use it against.
If I recall, the Scud was also the planet's the military's first rubber band powered missiles. So the fact that the Patriots weren't always on. But anyways, I'm sorry. Please continue.
That's fine. So the Patriot would be useful in taking out some of the high-end missiles that the Russians have been shooting at Ukrainian cities. The trouble is, as we know, their inventory of those missiles has been very depleted. They still have them, but they don't have anywhere near as many as they used to. So it's a missile that has a very narrow, I think, utility for the Ukrainians at this point. Had they had it a month ago, yeah, it probably would have been huge help. But I think right now it's useful, but not a critical, life-saving. Well, it will be, but you know what I mean when I say.
Yeah. It's not. It's not going to. The idea is that it's Iron Dome, and it's not. I think is what you're saying.
Right. Yeah, it fulfills a different mission than Iron Dome, but yeah, it's another layer in an already outstanding air defense system. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the reverse, which is the Ukrainian drone strikes that were made deep inside Russia last week. Russia has always been thought to have had one of the single most robust air defense networks in the entire world. And these relatively unsophisticated, obsolescent technology missiles, or drones, but they're still missiles, they're being used as missiles, managed to get through. So either they're operating with hubris and not bothering to turn on the anti-aircraft systems, or they don't have effective doctrine or systems in place to make that work as well as we thought it would.
So the Russians are performing less, significantly underperforming the expectations of the international community in regards to a military issue.
I know, it's mind-boggling how that could happen. When was the last time? Well, I know there was an incident early February. Couple since like on a weekly basis almost.
I'm sorry you can't make it. I got to say, the other thing is it's really nice having you around. I think, first of all, Starsky appreciates having you around because I don't think he often gets to pick the brains of somebody with the amount of military experience that you have. The people that have more military experience that are around Starsky are usually telling him what to do. Those are the conversations he has. It's like, you move here.
Well, I have seen a couple things where he's talked to people, but they're guys who were, and I'm not trying to denigrate these other people, but they were enlisted personnel. So they can talk tactics and that kind of stuff. But I think I tend to talk about somewhat higher level issues.
Which is what you were trained to do. I mean, that's what you, that was your
why
field.
I'm here.
Yeah. So I think he likes having you around. I like having you around too because what I do is I ask the most intelligent questions. I ask the best questions. And I think about it and I sit there and say, wow, I know what I'm doing. And everyone's going to look at Nick and say, he's so smart because he knows all this stuff. And I'm going to ask all the great questions. And then it turns out you got like a billion I never even crossed my mind. But it makes for a much better show. And so it's when you're around, we get to levels of discussion with Starsky that we don't otherwise get to.
Now, there's one other thing, and this I will not say is news. It is a rumor. I have not heard any confirmations about it. I just caught one mention of it today on some stuff I was doing, and I still think it bears mentioning. There is apparently some talk about giving the Ukrainians the American Predator B drone. That's the one that we used in Afghanistan and other areas of the world to hunt terrorists.
That's one of our most advanced, is it not? Yeah.
Well, it's not obsolete, but it's not our top tier drone technology at present.
Okay.
And it's interesting because apparently the Air Force is all in favor of giving it to them. The people who don't want to give it to them is the Department of Defense, the Pentagon.
Why is that?
And, well, the Air Force thinks it's fine because, as I said, it's not top-end technology. It would be to a large extent, a game-changing asset for them to have. They could use it in addition to conducting deep end strikes. It also allows you to loiter over an area for over a day, watching what's going on. And the moment the high value target presents itself, you conveniently drop a Hellfire missile or a JDAM or whatever on the target and take it out. So that would be a great way to kind of start eliminating some of these fortified positions that they have, which the Ukrainians are having trouble with, because you just say, okay, we have been watching for the past 24 hours, and we know there is an artillery battery operating in this area. This is where they've been going to get their ammunition. And if we wait until just the right time and send something in, we'll cause secondary detonations, take out not just the ammo dump, but also the vehicles that are being used to transport the ammo to the battery itself. And that shuts the battery down for a considerable period of time. Once that happens, you can attack with I won't say impunity, but a lot less concern about enemy artillery interfering with your operations. Things like that.
I did want to, by the way, so we got a super chat from Sinister Porpoise. So let me start with a super chat from this morning that I missed, probably because I was too busy falling out of my chair laughing, and also because I don't know, I was almost just not ready to be in the live chat. I glanced at it a few times, but Gaming with Robin gave us a super chat for donation to Nick's Sanity Fund, which was much appreciated.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the needs of that fund grew significantly this morning. So I would like to thank Gaming with Robin, and I do apologize for not mentioning that super chat this morning. Sister Porpoise, $2. Anchors away. Commander McMillan retired. So. Yeah, that was, I remember when I first learned about the drones that could do that, which is just sort of, loiter over a target for a period of time. You can just sit and wait instead of just like launching them when you think is a good time and hoping that it hits something good. It's just like,
With most artillery or missiles, you shoot it and it's going to come to Earth pretty quickly. Even an aircraft, unless it's, one of the long-range strategic bombers, can't loiter that long. It'll be up there for maybe 12 hours. This guy is the unclassified numbers they've released for certain configurations of the Reaper is 36 hours.
Well, those are the full ones. We don't have anything better than that, and the way I know that is because if we did, Donald Trump would have tweeted the specs out already.
Oh well, yeah.
You saw that, I'm sure, too. With it turns out he tweeted it was I think it was an Iranian missile site, and nobody had ever seen photographs that clear before, and so everyone assumed it had to be a drone, and it took air intelligence like 10 minutes to figure out, no, that's a satellite photo, and nobody knew we had satellites that powerful until Trump tweeted it out. He's a child. He's just he needs attention. Like, mommy, look at the top secret classified documents that they showed me today. That's literally it. Well, so what I'm going to do is definitely one of the things that's great is when you and I get a chance to chat before we meet with him is that if you end up not showing up, I can ask these questions. So any questions that you think of or want to talk about, and so I'm glad we're talking it the day before because it helps with that. So thank you for that. What was the? God, I don't know. I had my brain is I don't want to talk Trump all day or politics, but I'm the only one. It's probably naivety. I'm the only one that I know of that really thinks he's going to get indicted for something. I think there's just too much. I think there's too much stuff and too many people who are really pissed at him and too many people who care about the U.S. military and the secrets that he gave that aren't going to. I'm not saying he's going to go to jail, but I think he's going to get indicted and I think he's going to get convicted on something probably pretty serious. Or there'll be a deal.
I think you're right, but I think the worst punishment he's likely to see, other than perhaps fines, is house arrest at Mar-a-Lago for a year or some trivial amount like that.
Well, let's not say trivial. I mean, realistically speaking, being forced to live in Florida is tantamount to a war crime in my view. It's certainly cruel and unusual, but he seems to like it. So, yeah. No, I think you're right, and I think we've had that discussion. There's no way he ever sees the inside of a cell. There's no practical way to do that with a president. The Secret Service is obligated to stick with him till, I see that. I think the humiliation of being turned into a laughingstock, I don't necessarily find that as gratifying as I would the idea of him being in an orange jumpsuit. He's a superhero now, sorry. Well, it would be an orange jumpsuit with the Hamburglar, thing, the hat, and the black and white.
Cape. You got to have a cape.
And the cape, my bad. You know, I'm well, that would be satisfying. You know, you watch like what he did today, and it's like I think he's always been kind of a miserable human being. And when you take a look at where he's going to end up, at least realistically, where it looks like he's going to end up a laughingstock within his own party and thriving off of the very small number of ultra-conservative people who look at him, and for him, that's going to be the old days when they were respected and could get away with saying the N-word in public and all that other stuff, and that's all he's going to have, and that's going to be what he gloms on to and feeds him, and it's... which sort of gets back to I don't relish seeing him suffer. Well, I say I don't. All right, let me rephrase that. It's what I was talking about with Yi. I get concerned about how much we mock him, but he's at least put himself. Trump has done this to himself. He's put himself in the crosshairs, and he's the one who decided he could handle this job and was really clearly unqualified.
I'm still half convinced he never expected that he was going to win.
Oh, that I'm sure about. I have no doubt he thought he was going to lose, and in fact, you can see his and Ivanka Trump's face as the numbers are coming in, and it's looking more like he's going to win, and his face is just falling. He's looking like the candidate who lost, not the candidate who won.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was all just a scheme to be able to access those election funds and funnel them into his own private bank account. And then suddenly, holy crap, I could actually do this thing.
Well, and of all the qualified people who worked their asses off to win and have failed, and here's this guy who stumbles into the White House. Well, and I also think he wanted to do it to demonstrate that he could, and to demonstrate that he could at least be a credible candidate. Because I think the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where they mocked him, what was it? I forget who it was. A few people had said different comments. I can't remember the one that Obama said, but there was another one that was just sort of like, "Oh, I heard that Trump is going to be running for president as a Republican," which is odd because I thought he was going to be running as a joke. And yeah,
yeah, probably got his goat up because he's a counterpuncher.
Yeah, you had said that before, and I think that's really interesting. I never sort of thought about it that way, but I think that's an interesting analogy to use.
Yeah, I don't think he so much initiates fights. He may set up the grounds to cause the fight, but he doesn't want to start the fight. He's hoping you'll back down to just prove how great he is. But if you push back, then he comes at you with everything he's got. Because you're basically saying, "Oh, sorry about your tiny penis."
Yeah, I know. I don't. There is so much that this has forced me to reconsider about our culture, about our country, about the culture war. The fact that the staple that I think of when I see conservatives, and I think about when we're talking about conservatives, is you're not going to get help from anybody in this world. You have to man up. You have to own things. You have to take responsibility. You have to act like an adult. And all this other stuff. And I think what I'm talking. Maybe these are gross generalizations, but then to see this same crowd get behind Trump, who can't do any of those things. Yeah. Is
embracing the absolute antithesis of what you claim you're in favor of.
Yep, absolutely. Which is what I think. Again, his number one qualification is he pissed off the left. That was it. He pissed off the left, and they said, "I'm pissed at the left." He gets their goat. He gets under their skin. I'm voting for him. I don't care that I have to say that he's an everyday man, despite the fact he uses a golden toilet. So we have another super chat. I like this one. $5, Sinister Porpoise. Porpoise Soutter 2024. Make America snarky again. I like it. You got it. You got it. I will be your running mate, Porpoise. Let's do this thing. Let's do this. This is gonna be good. Make America snarky again. Porpoise does not stream all that much. She used to stream quite a bit, and it's funny because she would talk about snark, and she uses a lot of snark. She is snarky. But one of the comments that she had made once, and I thought this was interesting, was to really do good snark. It actually isn't cruelty. Cruelty is a different thing. Good snark is something you actually have to enjoy, take pleasure in, and most other people are going to find pleasure. It's like, that's a really good. So, yep, make America snarky again. She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Dear Lord. So, and then I don't know the let's see, we got. So we're going to have Starsky on tomorrow, 1 p.m. We're going to do Monday. We're going to be covering the final January 6th committee hearing, which I thought we had already had the final. I'm not opposed to more. Anything that investigates these things is fine by my book. But it looks like it's their conclusions. But they're like, we're going to consider whether or not we want to recommend criminal, whether we're going to refer these for criminal investigation for various people, including but not limited to Donald Trump, and doing that live. Okay, translation. We've already decided that we're going to refer all of these people for criminal. It's like, it's decided. It was like when we were covering they voted to subpoena him live. And as soon as we found out that was on the table, that they might do that, we're like, oh, they're doing that. So we just, we just got ready for it. We're like, okay, they're going to subpoena him live here. They're going to do the whole thing. It's like, how do you know? Well, because they said they might. And you don't float something like that if you haven't.
Subpoenas in this case is pretty much a admission that you're moving towards indictment.
Well, and I mean, they can get them even on the because they got Bannon on the same thing. So yeah, they're gonna. I think what we're gonna see on Monday is, amongst other things, a formal vote. It's going to be unanimous. They wouldn't do this publicly if they couldn't get it unanimous, and everybody's going to sit there and vote to refer Trump and everyone else for criminal investigation. Now, that doesn't actually mean a whole heck of a lot, and we'll talk more about that Monday. It's a little bit more symbolic. If there were no current investigation by the DOJ, then it would mean something. The DOJ would say, wait a minute, why do you want these guys investigated? But they're already investigating. I do think it kind of adds weight and gravitas to the investigation that they're doing, and is, with any luck, a bit of a mea culpa. Not a mea culpa, but maybe eases some of the tension over whether or not this was going to turn criminal, which happened very early on in these proceedings. So,
I know it's pure speculation, but let me ask you, what do you think is going to come of the threatened, when the GOP takes over the House? They have threatened that they're going to investigate Hunter Biden and anybody who, knows what a donkey represents, for crimes against humanity or whatever. How likely is that to actually happen, or is that just bluster?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, and equally important, assuming it does happen, what are the chances that it will actually do anything other than highlight the fact that Congress is divided? Because it has to be a bipartisan committee if people want to be on it. And the reason the current one is not entirely bipartisan is because no Republican dared say they were going to sit on that panel.
I
can't imagine that the Democrats would ever let that happen if you were doing a Biden investigation.
The Democrats would have that, and even no matter how much they object, the Democrats won't make the same mistake Trump made. They'll get people on that panel. I mean, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. The funny thing is, I think I've been avoiding trying to figure that out for myself, waiting to see if I can find any tips either way. Part of it, as you know, has to be just the bluster of, everybody's pissed about Trump being investigated. So now they're going to do the same. I think as Trump loses steam, some interest in this is going to wane because it's just retaliatory. On the flip side, it's a great way to keep the Democrats on their heels for the next 2 years. It's a great way to distract everybody, and it's a great way to distract from the fact that they got elected without any actual proposals. They were just like, well, we love Trump, we love America, and that's why you need to vote for us. And now that they actually have to legislate, they're going to have a problem. It also is going to distract.
Jam donut.
Yes, yeah. It's also going to distract, I think, from the party infighting. And I think they're interested in doing that until they get their own house in order. The problem is, I think some of the people who are engaged in the party infighting don't want to distract from that. And they're going to realize that making it big in public is going to give them leverage. So they're going to say, oh, yeah, you guys want to go after Biden because you don't want to solve our own problems. And so I think it's going to be bigger than I'm comfortable with. I think it's going to be way bigger than is appropriate. He's a private citizen who the Congress has no job, has no real reason to be investigating. I think moderates are going to be interested in it because it's going to be salacious. I think the right is going to be interested in it because it's salacious and because it hurts the left. So I think you're going to get more support for it from the public than I'd like to see too. And as long as there's at least some, you're going to see it going. So my guess is it's going to start. It's going to taper off, and then. And it'll last a year, I would imagine. This is wild speculation. Yeah. I'm not as confident in this as I'd like to be. But if I had to guess, it'll last at least a year. Then they're going to just quietly kind of kill it, bring it to a close, and then say, okay, we conclude that a lot of stuff happened, but it's not really our job to do anything about it. So we've referred it to the Department of Justice, who already had all these records, by the way. So, we've done an awesome job. Thank us very much, and then go.
Yeah. The thing that has me wondering is, as you know, Hunter Biden is a private citizen engaged in private business. So it's not really something per se that's the responsibility or under the umbrella of DOJ. But if they start that, Congress. If they start that, doesn't it then potentially open up the Pandora's box of investigated things like Clarence Thomas's wife's ties with the Chinese Communist Party, or Mitch McConnell with the Russian aluminum industry?
Nope. No, it does not. And the reason it does not is because this is one of the areas where the Republicans really have some things pegged far better than the liberals. The liberals aren't going to do that. I think liberals have made a mistake.
It says a lot about a failure to understand how to do modern politics.
Well, in part, I think. But I do think, so I don't want to suggest, and I've heard it said like, well, we're liberals and we're above this. And there's actually genuine truth to that. But we're also not above other tactics that the Republicans are. We just justify our things differently. So we're willing to, if we're, doing things that are furthering specifically our values and what we think is important, including inclusion and diversity, anything that does those things, we're happy to break rules that the Republicans will not break. A great example, I actually think, is passing Obamacare through, a pretty good example of passing Obamacare through the interstate commerce. Yeah, that is a kind of a sneaky thing that I think the Republicans would do on the low end, but doing it to that level and going essentially completely around the sacrosanct Constitution that you can't fuck with, to them is like, okay, these people hate this country. They do despicable things that are spitting in the face of the Constitution and the separation of powers, and they know full well they were never, ever intended to do this. And all of those, especially that last one, that's correct. It was absolutely not intended to be that way, but we justify it because we're getting health care to everybody. That's a good thing. And then I think you see conservatives who genuinely believe that there is some kind of cabal and that Biden is part of this evil thing and that the only real way to get him down is to go around doing all of these things that Congress really shouldn't be doing, that the liberals wouldn't touch, but they find justified for whatever reasons. So, I don't think the liberals, I do think they should investigate Clarence Thomas, but Clarence Thomas isn't a private citizen. I don't think they will investigate Clarence Thomas. I think the fact that it hasn't crossed any conservative's mind that liberals would do this back to them indicates they know exactly who they're dealing with.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think in principle you'd be right, but because it's the left, nope.
Yeah, probably true.
I would like to see, I think there should be other ways of stopping it. I mean, the other thing is, it's interesting. This U.S. Supreme Court is very troubling for reasons that all of us know and have discussed before. I do think there's one benefit, which is for the most part, with perhaps Thomas and Alito withstanding, they actually really do believe in some of these values that they're espousing. And I'm not trying to be snarky, believe it or not. I'm not trying to, but what I'm trying to suggest is that's one reason why they're not just for like a right utopia, because they've handed Trump some of his most significant losses, but on very similar grounds. So while I do think that they will cheat for the right, I do think I would much rather be on the right and have a case before them than on the left. I also think that they really do believe many of these things. Now, Roberts truly believes that the court is so sacrosanct that it doesn't matter if you catch Thomas shooting somebody with a gun. No, that's and it's this circular line of reasoning where it's the job of the head the head of the U.S. judiciary, the highest court in the land, to clean up its own mess regarding this, and they are so above reproach that they can't even make a mess in the first place. Was essentially his argument. You can't even question their ethics. Yeah.
In other words, they're a bunch of Pharisees.
Yes. But I do think that so they're going to shoot down marriage equality. I think that's dead. They're going to use the Dred Scott reasoning to shoot that down. And we've talked, and I'm sorry, I hate having to tell people who fought really hard for gay marriage that bill is probably dead. Like, oh, it's over. It isn't over. It's going to go before the Supreme Court, and what they're going to argue is Congress didn't have the right to do that. Well, if that's how they felt, why wouldn't they argue that the first time? Because they wanted to waste everybody's time and have two cases come up before the Supreme Court that they could shoot down instead of one. So, but I also think that on those same grounds, I'm curious if there's a possibility of appealing any kind of action taken against Biden by Congress to the Supreme Court, because that does strike me as the kind of thing that ideologically almost all of them are going to object to in one way or another, with the possible exception of Alito and Thomas, who I think will just be like, it's the right, so it's okay. But the other conservatives, I think, may have a hard time with that. And the same people who handed Trump his previous losses, I think, would be very interested in checking the House, the House, checking Congress if they attempt to go after Biden in a personal way. How long before they do that? Would the left actually risk going before the Supreme Court? I don't know. I think they should. I think it's a better shot than you'd think that they'd get it through. That's my thinking, at least.
Okay. Interesting.
In time, from the Sinister Porpoise, I think they have a hard time justifying it when they say Congress needed to provide clarification, and Thomas would have to vote against his own interracial. He would not. Unfortunately, it would imply that, but lawyers are great at implying, or judges, implying things that aren't true. No, I think because here's the thing. What he's going to argue is, and they're going to do the same thing they did for Roe, in the Roe decision, they said this is such a unique decision, you can't apply it to anything else. So we are not talking about any of the other awesome rights we have. This doesn't apply to them. But here's all the reasoning, which, by the way, does apply to them, that allowed us to have our decisions. But this decision doesn't apply to them, which means that people go back and but that way they can cherry pick decision after decision without having all the slate of the last 50 years of progressive agenda undone. So what's going to happen is they're going to say, oh no, we're only talking about this one protection bill, and they're going to find something about it that makes it unique. I know that's very hard considering Loving versus, or the, whatever it was, the Loving decision, but they did it with Roe v. Wade, and they're going to say, okay, this is it, and Congress overstepped its authority. And that's the same thing they said for the EPA. What else? Just about everybody now, the EPA, DEA, they're saying they all overstepped their authority. Congress is not permitted to make these organizations, and Congress isn't permitted to make that law. They're going to wipe that out. And I'm curious. That's a good question. Do you think Thomas would actually overturn Loving if it would go back to the states and if he was assured that his state would still recognize his own marriage?
I suspect yes.
Yeah. I'm leaning towards that.
He's part of that group that literally believes because I'm wealthy, I'm untouchable. Laws do not apply to me in my class.
It's odd that they don't get along with Trump. I mean, that's exactly what we had that discussion before, and I thought you had made an excellent point. He really is. He can't fathom that the laws apply to him. That's the biggest. Yeah. There's that disconnect for him. It's like, wait a minute. And aside from the fact that he also thinks the president really is king, the laws don't. It's an interesting, bordering on delusion. Wow.
Well, I mean, a lot of it goes way, way back. I mean, the whole electoral college thing is a perfect example of that. The electoral college, the electoral college is basically the oligarchy's last defense line or last line of defense against the popular vote, giving them something that they can't abide.
Mm.
And that's what the intent was all along for it. You know, democracy's all well and good in theory, but we don't want the dictatorship of the masses because we are the privileged people. We're the plantation landowners, the big merchants, the bankers. Those rules shouldn't have to apply to us. They're only there to apply to the smaller folk. Keep the middle class and the working class in check.
You should talk to Sunday. That would be an interesting discussion. All right. Well, I'm probably going to wrap it up a little early. We usually go for about 90 minutes. I am exhausted. So I'm probably going to wrap this up. I'm doing better, too. I'm breathing better, which is nice. But I'm also fine if I'm not careful and pushing myself more. So, yeah. All right. Well, like I said, though, please don't hesitate to, if you come up with any questions that you want me to ask Starsky tomorrow, let me know. We'll ask him.
Text him to you.
Yeah, that'll be great. I get to ask him that.
Text him in the Discord.
Yeah. By the way, anyone watching now, come join us on the Discord. Lance is there all the time, causing trouble with whoever is willing to engage with them, but it's always lots of fun to watch. You'll find also clips from all the news sources that we've been using, what we rely on to make the show. It's a show is largely made by the community. People clip stuff, people let us know what's going on, and we go out and we go with it. So come on in and join us, and then let's see. Monday we'll be carrying the January 26th committee live. We'll see what they have to say. And then we've got coming up the 𝗢𝗚𝐽𝐴. I know. Don't tell Maddie. I still can't pronounce this. But the dinner table. Christopher 𝗲𝗲𝐻 channel. Those of you who are fans of us, many of you know who he is. He's also co-hosted, is guest host on the show a lot. He's been a guest. He's talked psychology, and also one of my favorites was science communication. That was marvelous. And he calls his channel The Dinner Table, and it's about coming around and meeting and people hanging out and chatting and having a good time. And the idea that he had was, if you don't have anyone at your dinner table for the holidays, come join us at ours. So he proposed a 15-hour stream, dinner table and In Time together. We will be hosting it on both our channels, and then we'll be revolving it as well. We'll be simulcasting to a third channel that will change as we have different guests that were lined up, different channels to host for an hour. There's going to be music, there's going to be game shows, there's going to be, and it's a little off-brand for us, admittedly. Usually, we're real serious, whatever, but we are going to do some news. We're going to have some serious stuff.
Are serious business.
Yeah. We're gonna have it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I think for people who, if you've got a little time, anytime on the 29th, we will be streaming for quite some time, and come join us. I hope you guys will have fun with that. We'll be learning more about that on the Discord, and if you know him, you probably already know a good deal about it as it is. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Lance, once again. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, I have to say, from the bottom of my heart, for keeping the hippos out of this one. I think that the show is. Let's just say I'm not as concerned about the deplatforming of this one as the other one. It's like a lifetime ban from YouTube is just words that I'm not a big fan of. Thank you so much for joining us, and. Have yourself sorry we'll miss you tomorrow, but have yourself a wonderful weekend, and we look forward to seeing you same time next week.
Sounds great. See you then.
See you then. Night all.